What can you say to an avoidant to bring them closer? I know a lot of you guys are frustrated with your avoidant partner, and I was once too. Maybe you tried distancing yourself, giving them space. You tried waiting, you tried matching their pace, and hoped that by doing it, you're going to help them get in touch with their feelings for you. You're going to make them miss you, and they'll finally do something. They'll finally get in touch, or they'll finally move the relationship forward. I used to be stuck in this way of thinking myself too, and I would endlessly wait and I'd try to be patient. And then once my patience would run out, I'd get anxious and I'll start chasing and do things that would make me look desperate. There's something about anxious avoidant relationships that most of us don't fully understand. We think that the secret to get an avoidant to want to be in a stable, healthy relationship lies in awakening their feelings. And it is true to some degree, not to discard the need for space in an anxious avoidant relationship. It's definitely there and it does make them miss you, but it's not about the space, or it's not about awakening the feelings that are already there. It's about strengthening the connection and the bond between the two of you. And you can't really do that when you're not interacting with each other. And that's why space alone isn't enough to get an avoidant to trust you more or to feel closer. It's only enough to get them to come back to the point at which you already were as a couple. But if you want to go deeper, if you want to go further, if you want to move things forward, you need something else. In this video, I'm going to give you 3 or actually 4 very simple phrases I discovered accidentally or not so accidentally that were a total game changer in my relationship. They were what allowed me to get out of this breakup makeup cycle and get out of a relationship where I endlessly felt like I wasn't getting what I wanted and I was always insecure and Gabriel always felt like he had one foot out of the door, to where we are today, where I do feel secure. I don't worry about him leaving. I know he couldn't, and we are married and we do plan to spend the rest of our lives together. So, without further ado, let's jump to the phrases. So, the first thing you can say to your avoidant, or actually the first 2 things, because there are 2 ways of communicating the same thing, is I hear you, or you're right. People don't understand the power of validating your partner or of validating their point of view. Everybody craves validation. Avoidants do too. And when they say things that might trigger you, like, I need space, when they say this, it gets you to get defensive or over explain yourself or feel offended. What you need to realize is them saying these things is them trying to communicate something. And if you respond in a way that will validate their point of view, you can achieve 2 things. First off, you can use some reverse psychology on an avoidant. Let me explain this on this space example, right? So let's say your avoidant says, I need space. And you respond with, you're right. We have been spending too much time with each other. And already you can see that the avoidant will be taken aback and will feel a bit like, that's not the answer I was expecting to hear. But they might double down on it and say, I feel like I've been losing myself in the relationship. And if you continue just going with it and validating and say, I hear you. Yeah, me too. And I don't want to lose myself. I feel like I've been neglecting all my friends. And it's nice as it is to hang out with you. I need to spend time with other people too. And I need to spend time with my family or my friends, or they probably even forgot I existed. So by using these 2 simple phrases, you're achieving 2 things. First off, you're making your avoidant anxious because that will make them anxious. You know, it's not just you who is afraid of them pulling away. They will also feel anxious when you're the one who's playing it cool and isn't afraid of pulling away. And the second big thing you're achieving by using these phrases is you're building trust. You're intensifying your connection. You're making them feel like you get them and you two are on the same page and you want similar things. So you're actually bringing him or her closer. And that's what I discovered, that it's this simple, that it's just enough for me to not go into my typical anxious overthinking and being like, oh my God, Gabriel said he needed space. What does it mean? And instead, just taking a moment to think about it and be honest with myself. And I'll realize, okay, I have not seen my friends for a week now, or it would be nice to hang out with a bunch of girls. I miss that. And I can understand where he's coming from because we have been in a bit of a bubble. Or when he would be talking about being hesitant about making long term plans, I could also go into feeling rejected and feeling like I'm not enough. But if I just checked in with myself, I realized, yeah, commitment is scary. Binding yourself to one person is scary, or even moving in together. It is a big step. It means that you're gonna have to make things work and put up with all sorts of weird habits. And they're gonna know about your social media addiction, and you're gonna know about how messy they are or how OCD they are about their spaces. So using these two very simple phrases, I hear you, and you're right, opens up a whole lot of connection and turns something that could have possibly been a conflict into an opportunity to feel closer, to discover that you're not so different, and to actually feel like you two understand each other. But you cannot always agree with everything your avoidance says, right? And you also cannot agree with all their choices or actions. There will be times in your relationship when you need something from them and they'll keep on rejecting you. Maybe you've already been there. Maybe you already tried having these conversations that feel like you're talking to a wall and you're explaining yourself, and they're just not listening. I've definitely been there. I still get there sometimes. And I know that there's always this danger of falling into thinking, oh, maybe I didn't explain it clearly enough. Maybe I should say it one more time. But if you have said something to your avoidant partner and they never responded positively, if whenever you bring up this issue, they just either get defensive or pull away, you need to recognize this moment and you need to stop explaining yourself and stop hoping that this time they'll get it, and use this next phrase I'm about to give you. What about this triggers you? Yeah, that's right. They're just being triggered. That's why you're talking to a wall. You're talking to someone who's triggered, who's being emotional, who's being defensive. So you need to notice it and call it out. Instead of trying to get your point across, you need to make room for them to speak about whatever it is that's going on for them that's preventing them from hearing you or preventing them from giving you what you're asking for. There is no way around it, unfortunately. So, one super simple but super common example of where this happens is when you ask your avoidant partner something like, text me when you get home. And they just never do it. I've seen it happen over and over again among my coaching clients. Relationships have ended because of this problem. So if you recognize this is an issue like this, where you expressed a very particular need and your avoidant partner refuses to do this, that's when you need to ask them, what about this triggers you? In the context of text me when you get home, what usually happens is people say, this is exactly what my parents always needed me to do, or you sound just like my mother, and I've been controlled in my previous relationship. I can't do this. I don't want to feel like I'm being controlled, or I don't want to feel like a child. In this particular case, it is a valid reason, right? Everybody has their limits. Everybody has their boundaries. If this is like a hard line for your avoidant partner, so much so you might even break up over it or you keep on fighting over it, but you feel like they have a good justification for feeling triggered, you also need to respect it. And you respecting their boundary and their limit and stopping to ask them for this thing that they're clearly not willing to give you, this is where you'll gain their trust. And ironically, they will then feel more inclined to sometimes text you when they get home. So this is when you're asking for something the avoidant is not willing to give, but it's not necessarily something that would make your relationship not work. But what about the things that are absolute necessity for you, something you cannot possibly compromise on? So one of the things like this in my relationship was when I felt like I couldn't count on Gabriel, where because he was so unwilling to make long-term plans, if we had social engagements far out in the future, I could never be sure if he will be there with me or not. And that sucked. In general, not being able to count on your partner sucks. It's one of the most fundamental needs everybody has. But again, me expressing this need of being able to count on him was something that would trigger him, was something that just made him shut down or pull away or dismiss me. And this is where I could use, what about this triggers you? And when I asked him that, he initially said, I'm not triggered. And uh, I said, well, if you're not triggered, what are you? And we got into this whole argument of him saying, well, you're not making any sense. You're contradicting yourself. I don't even know what you're wanting. You're not being logical, which made me say to him, I'm not trying to be logical. I'm being emotional. I'm expressing an emotional need. What about me having emotional needs triggers you? And, that opened the whole Pandora's box. It does for many people, right? This question. And that's the point of it. Because when your avoidant partner has a limit like this, when you're asking them to do something nice for you and they're refusing and refusing and refusing, it means they've been treated like this themselves, but they don't realize it, or it's like something that's been weighing on them. And they need someone to make room for their triggers and give them space to speak about them. So with Gabriel, it opened up this whole conversation about his childhood and my childhood, and he got to open up. And then it made me understand why he's so hesitant to make long-term plans or to offer me stability. I saw the context, and then it was easier for me not to take it personally. And at the same time, he had room to even talk about these things that were buried and forgotten. It brought us closer, right? It didn't get me what I wanted, but it brought us closer. And here we're moving on to the last phrase I want to talk about in this video. Or maybe, again, two phrases. So it's all well and good to make room for your avoidant partner's feelings and triggers and their judgments of emotions or whatever, or their need to be independent and not bound by anything. But once you have given them the space, it's okay to say, hey, I listened to you, and now I need you to listen to me. That's like a little phrase interlude that I find is quite useful. And I think people need to know that it's okay to insist on being heard, especially after you have provided something like this. So if you want your avoidant partner to actually hear you, I find there is a very particular way in which you have to phrase your thoughts and feelings that totally helps. And I'm not going to even take credit for it. This is something I lifted from a book that Gabriel made me read from Nonviolent Communication by Marshall B. Rosenberg. It's a good book on communication, not just in relationships, but in general. But the thing he's teaching in this book is this way of expressing your need. When you said X, I felt Y. So, for example, when you said, I need space, I felt rejected. When you formulate things this way, it becomes instantly clearer for the avoidant what you're actually needing, where you're actually at. But a very important thing that make this phrase, this way of talking so powerful is you need to talk about your feelings. You can't be talking about them. So you can't say, when you said, I need space, I felt like you don't care about me. Because if you say it like this, they'll just get defensive and be like, oh, I did this for you and that for you. It's never good enough, no matter how hard I try. But if you keep the attention on yourself and talk about your own feelings, they can't argue with that. They can't say, no, you didn't feel rejected. Gabriel made me learn this. And then I used it in our relationship over and over again. It got him to reassure me about a lot of things. And it also got me to discover that I was actually triggered, or some of my fears were completely irrational. So one of these things, right, was I said, when you say I need space, I feel afraid that I'm never going to see you again. And me verbalizing this fear that I kept inside of me for, I don't know, years, months, made it already so ridiculous because why would I think I'm never going to see him again? That is crazy. And he was like, "What? Why would you worry about never seeing me again?" And we actually got to talk about my own personal baggage, and not only he could reassure me, but he could actually support me in overcoming this crazy irrational fear. So let me give you a second good example of where this phrase is very useful, and it's definitely something I think a lot of you guys will resonate with, is imagine saying to your avoidant, when you became so cold, I felt rejected. Like everything I did didn't matter to you, or like it didn't count at all. We all get so triggered in anxious avoidant relationships or in relationships in general. And using this phrase can help you realize that what you're feeling is exaggerated. And at the same time, it can help your avoidant partner know what exactly you need to hear to just relax. Because I needed to hear, no, all your efforts do count. I do appreciate all the things you do for me. I'm just in a bad mood today. And something that could have turned into a fight was just interrupted then and there. And I was like, oh, okay, why are you in a bad mood? What happened? So this is like an instant conflict diffuser for when you yourself are triggered. All right, guys. So these were my phrases for you that you can use to bring your avoidant partner closer. Discovering them was a game changer for me. You know, you don't have to always fall into the same pitfalls and patterns. In just saying things slightly differently or reacting slightly differently, you have the power to bring your avoidant closer. You have the power to turn what could be conflict and could be disconnection into connection. And connection is what gets avoidance to commit to you. It's what gets them to trust you. If you'd like to know even more phrases or get even more actionable tips on how to change a relationship with an avoidant partner, this is something we cover in our Attach and Avoidant program. In here, you'll find lots of scripts and a step-by-step method you can apply to your relationship to get your partner from being avoidant to giving you everything you want and need. We all want the same things in a relationship. Avoidance and anxious people, everybody wants to feel loved, appreciated, safe, understood, and also free to be themselves. You're not so different, and you can get things to change. I hope you found this helpful. I'm trying a bit of a new approach here, giving you guys phrases. Let me know what you think about them in the comments. And if you're on the lookout for more attachment style advice, be sure to subscribe to our channel. Thank you for watching.